Welcome to Real GM Radio. Before we jump in, do me a favor and subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel to catch the podcast when we record live, tune into the best segments, and join the Real GM Radio community. It helps me, it helps you, it's a win-win. Find us on youtube.com/@RealGMRadio. Welcome to Real GM Radio. Coming up on today's episode, Katie Heindl, who writes the Basketball Feelingz Substack, joins me to hand out some NBA awards, but not the ones you're used to. Then Nick Angstadt from Locked On Mavericks jumps on to talk about what it was like to be in the building for Luka's return and what comes next for the Mavericks. Also, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Katie Heindl is here. She's the author of the Basketball Feelingz Substack and a first-time guest with me on Real GM Radio. Thanks for coming on and welcome.
Thanks, Wes. I know you from so many other things and other past lives and our history in and around the NBA, but not this yet.
No, this is new. I don't know if you've ever were on Real GM Radio prior to me jumping on as the host this season, but it's a fun way to just kind of lay out, talk about a bunch of stuff. We'll kind of take this conversation into a bunch of different directions. I want to get a little bit into the MVP conversation, and then we're going to get into our Feelingz Awards for the end of the regular season. But I want to talk about the big story, Luka Doncic returning to Dallas as a member of the Lakers, first time since the trade, all of the emotion around it. What stood out to you watching that game?
Well, I knew it was going to be a revenge game, and I do love a revenge game. I don't know if that's out of character, but I do really enjoy it. I enjoy like secondary revenge games. Basically, like I need someone to get their revenge eventually. So if it's not the first time around, it'll be the second.
Revenge is important.
Yeah. So I'm glad that Luka got his. Granted, did we really expect any different with a very hobbled Mavs team? Probably not. And I liked the juxtaposition of Luka very much understandably emotional with the tribute that played. So I think to me, it was kind of a perfect game because you got the revenge, you got the montage, you got the tears, like you got everything.
We really did get everything. And first of all, the tribute video itself was 2.5 minutes long. I was here for Jimmy Butler, and here in Miami, I was here for Jimmy Butler's return video. Very different circumstances, obviously. That tribute video was about, I don't know, maybe a minute long. That tends to be the normal runtime for a tribute video, but this was the Irishman of tribute videos. It was just, it went forever. And it showed all the moments, and you really, like, I don't know about you. I don't feel like Luka's been in the league that long. You know, he's still relatively young in his career, and you just forget, wow, there was he's done a lot of stuff. There was a lot of big shots, a lot of moments. You go back to the bubble, and then obviously the finals run last year, and then the camera pans to him, and he's just crying. And you could tell he was even holding back more. Like the bottom lip is quivering. It's the whole thing. And I'm sitting there on my couch. I'm getting emotional just watching this because you really start to put yourself in his shoes. And it's like, this guy was just uprooted from a life that he thought he was going to have. And then it was just stripped away from him. And I think some people could say, well, he's making $1 million. He's still a millionaire. He's an NBA star. He's living in Los Angeles. It could be worse. Yeah, nobody's saying it couldn't be worse. But no, to see that human emotion play out in person, and knowing afterwards when he spoke about it, he didn't really know how he was going to react, and just seeing that raw emotion, we don't see that with our athletes very much, and it was refreshing and interesting and cool in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, we really don't, because I think we don't really hold space for it in a lot of the day-to-day, right, of the NBA. Like I think we hold space for it in these moments where there's this feeling of like he might be maligned if he didn't show emotion. Granted, I also think he's a pretty he wears his, like, for good or for ill, like he wears his emotions, right, pretty outwardly. That's why a lot of people don't like watching him play basketball.
That's why officials eject him when they don't need to.
Yeah. I'm the opposite of you. I'll take as long of a montage as I can get. I'm thinking back to like an Amir Johnson montage the first time he came back to the Raptors. Everyone else is like,
got that.
This only needs to be 20 seconds. I'm like, why can't it be 10 minutes long? Or like to run another one, like why not have two? First time out and halftime. Anyway, I think to your point about the fact that we have the sense like he hasn't been in the league that long. That was actually underscored to me of how long it has been and how much time I've forgotten when Trae Young, I think he posted about his Luka's reaction, and he just said like he was never going to leave.
Right.
And I thought about like how those two are just tied together for the entirety of their careers now. And you go back and just like, the draft night, there's just like the draft night swap, basically, whether they want that or not, there's like a connection there. And I think like, unfortunately, with the speed in which the NBA moves, and I write about this a lot, we lose a lot of the sense of time and history and, relationships that are built up in that. And obviously that goes for the time that Luka spent, I think, in Dallas, and being a franchise leader and becoming the star of that team. That also, like, obviously, you're going to talk to Nick about this, and probably Dallas fans are sick of talking about this, but just the way that the city embraced him when, he was kind of a maligned villain for any other fan base, but for Dallas, like, he's their villain,
Right. And that's a special thing, right? And so just the Nick Angstadt part of this episode comes out later. I actually already recorded it with him, and one of the things that he talked about was how it's more, sports is more than just winning the championships, right? And Nico Harrison come out and say like, hey, it's okay, trust me, we're gonna win a championship because of this or whatever. But you got rid of our guy. That was our guy. And he likened it almost to when you find out Santa's not real. It's like Christmas still exists. Like Mavericks games will still happen, and I'll still be there for the Mavericks games, but it just won't have that same magic anymore that it used to have. And that's, watching this league, covering this league for as long as like we have, it's clear that, you can get into we can get into the X's and O's and the Excel spreadsheets of the CBA and all that stuff, but every once in a while a guy just walks into the league that just has that magical quality. And there's very few players that have that and possess that, and Luka clearly has that and had that. I love that he came out for the revenge. I'm here for a revenge story as well. I love that he had 31 points in the first half while like wiping the tears away from his eyes, like at the same time. It was just absolutely wild. What most interests you about all of this kind of going forward? Is it the Mavericks piece of it? Is it the Lakers? Is it Luka? Is it the general NBA sense of now we have this star, this European star in Los Angeles? Like, you can take it in any direction. Obviously, I'm asking you an open-ended question here.
Yeah. I guess I'll go back to what you said about, this like gutting of the Mavericks in the sense of sports and basketball is not always all about winning. And I think Luka has a rare quality, which sometimes, to go back to what we said before, I think he's maligned for, but the sense of like, he never really loses. I don't want to say he doesn't take the game very seriously, because he is an incredibly serious competitor, but there's like a certain lightness, about him. There's a certain like understanding of the showmanship of basketball. And it's like, to me, very intriguing that now he's alongside basically the greatest showman in the league in LeBron James. And the pairing of the two of them, I was pretty skeptical at first, not for like the on-court play, honestly, just for like the personal dynamic, because I think LeBron is so used to being the big star, in any galaxy and any team ecosystem that he's been on. And like Luka, quite similarly, but like the two of them have made for a very complementary couple, like complementary teammates in that sense. I don't know if that's because LeBron understands he's kind of like, I'm not in the camp that like he's ever going to take a backseat to anybody, right? It's still very much LeBron James's team, LeBron James's league. But I think I did doubt like how Luka would take to the more like gaudy shine, of a Lakers franchise, right? Like it's a different quality of stardom. And I think it's a different quality of stardom that you're asked to really shoulder. Lakers fans live and die by their team. And are always rewarded for it. Very unfairly, they're always rewarded for it. It's crazy to me that they're third in the West. Anyway, I think that like that pairing is so intriguing to me, and basically like getting to see in the seasons to come how Luka's going to make that his own and wear it. I think in a way that's going to be so different from like a Kobe, a LeBron, and now him. Like, I do have the sense that he'll stay, because why would you want to leave a situation like that? Granted, crazier things have happened. They did happen this season. So I'm very interested to see the kind of like star quality that he steps into with that franchise specifically.
It's such a great call because I keep finding myself drawn back to the Luka storyline, right? Because obviously the fire Nico, the Dallas Mavericks, everything that happens with that is its own thing and it's important, especially that fan base. But then there's the LeBron part of this. What does this mean for LeBron's legacy? Can Luka help LeBron get another ring, get him that fifth ring, and who knows what that means for him? Is that Tom Brady winning in Tampa, and what does that mean for his career there? But then I keep going back. Okay, but Luka would get, if that happened, his first championship, and then how many more are we talking about for Luka? I'm just really interested. We're not going to know this for obviously a very long time, but what is the trade from Dallas? What chapter is that in Luka's book at the end of the day? Is it the beginning? Is it the end? Is it somewhere in the middle? Like what does it mean for the rest of his career? And when he gets, there's a lot of people going into that draft. You talked about the draft earlier, but who thought that Luka should have been the first pick, and he's not. DeAndre Ayton goes number 1, Marvin Bagley goes number 2, and then Luka goes 3, and then we get the trade between Dallas and Atlanta. I wondered if at that moment, some people pointed that as like Tom Brady going in the 6th round, like that moment, that slight that he needed to just kind of exalt his revenge on the rest of the league at that point. And now that feels like such like a nothing, like, oh, boo-hoo, you were the 3rd pick in the draft. Like, who cares after a couple of 7-footers? This could have the potential to just completely turn his career around. Like all the concerns that the Mavericks may have had about his conditioning and all that stuff. The crazy part is that they could have been right, because maybe in some galaxy far, far away that he never gets traded from Dallas and he does get complacent and he does let the conditioning kind of go in a certain direction. Maybe all that stuff happens and Nico Harrison would have been wrong not to trade him. But in this weird way, he almost makes himself wrong no matter what if Luka goes to Los Angeles, turns all of that kind of stuff, those concerns around, and learns from LeBron and all those things, and then just takes off and has this career that nobody even thought was imaginable, perhaps even in Dallas. Like the sliding doors of it is, to me, fascinating, especially just when it comes down to Luka's career.
Yeah, and the sliding doors of it, especially when you think of like Luka potentially absorbing by osmosis, because it would be impossible not to, but like LeBron's dedication to conditioning, right? And there's no way something like that doesn't rub off on you, no matter like how stubborn you or your habits are. Like I'm obviously a big also proponent, I don't know how to say this properly, like proponent of bodies, and the fact that like we should know better by now that there is no longer one prototype. Like there's not a prototypic body in the NBA. Like Nikola Jokic, who I'm sure we're going to talk about later, is a prime example of that. But there's also, it's not just Jokic anymore. Like there are so many good examples of athletes who just like, who don't fit a certain mold anymore. So I was always a bit, dubious of this idea of like, will he, like his conditioning, like how he looks. It's like, yeah, can he still go out and get 30 points in a first quarter? Yeah.
Right.
Can he win
still
you?
go out and lead you to an NBA Finals? Turns out, yeah.
Yeah, he can, and he has recently. So I think, but like now I think in a weird way, maybe Nico has like shot himself in the foot because of what we just said of like, probably Luka's never going to be in as good of shape as his career as like this time in LA, right?
Right. He picked the one team that had the best guy ever taking care of his body in LeBron. Like maybe if you trade him to Orlando, he's just like, all right, cool, I'm just going to eat at
Portland, where you're like, it rains all the time and I'm just like eating it in my house. Yeah.
Or Milwaukee and he's just drinking Coors Light or Miller Lite in Milwaukee. Yeah. I think it's Miller Lite. Yeah, he's just drinking Miller Lite the whole time. All right, you mentioned Jokic. Let's just jump right into the MVP thing. I thought I was going to vote Shai Gilgeous-Alexander the entire season. Basically, so Bontemps does the straw polls. The first one I did, I had Jokic, and then ever since then I've had SGA. And then I actually sat down to do like my unofficial official ballot yesterday, and I'm like, am I actually going to go Jokic here? So you look at I was going through the numbers, and you're really kind of like digging into this stuff here. I think it's really close, obviously, between Jokic and SGA. I still don't know what I would do if I had an official MVP ballot. I don't know if are you settled on how you would go?
Yes.
You are. You know exactly what
I have been. I don't think I've changed all season. Yeah.
Where are you?
With Shai.
You're with Shai. Okay. Yeah. That's ultimate. I think that's where I'm going with it. But like, okay. So to help me talk through this. How do you just there's the whole most valuable player. How do we even define it? How do you see and look at and think about the MVP award every year?
In a very boring this is not how I think about it, but if you want to go by a very boring binary, I do think it should be awarded to the athlete on the best team, right? The best consistent team all season, because we know how difficult that is. That's a very hard thing to do. And, the Thunder are going to be 70 wins?
Close to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if not close to it. That's very impressive to me. So I think you then have Shai, who's been, the driver of that. So that's the boring binary. But like in my gut, I think a lot of our colleagues and peers, I honestly think the Jokic stuff, not that he's not deserving, and I understand he is having the best season of his career, numerically speaking, but I think there's a real reticence or a fear or something of like, we can't, because basically in all the rhetoric I've seen, it's a lot of people wanting to give it to Shai and then talking themselves out of it, in the sense of like, he's not ready yet. He's got plenty of these to come. And yeah, like maybe he does, but at some point you have to start. And I think this is this is more than just a foot in the door. Like he kicked down the door, I think, last season, and this season he's taken a giant step through it. So I think there's a point when you have to stop talking yourself out of it or being like, oh, it's not his time. He's still waiting in the wings. Like it very much is. And I think you see that consistently night after night with the confidence that he plays with, the dynamism he plays with. He is very much in the Jokic like scheme of things, in that he changes the way basketball is getting played around him. So he is changing like tectonically the game as well. And to me, that's more of what I look at, is like, how impactful is this person and the way that they play basketball on a season? And like, will things be the same after this? No. And like, I get it. It's tough between Shai and Jokic, because Jokic is still doing that and is going to hopefully be doing that for a long time. But I think just in terms of like someone we've never seen before playing a way that we've never seen before, that's been, to me, Shai, and it's been Shai all season. Yeah. And of course I'm biased. I'm very patriotic these days.
Right.
So
fair enough.
For political reasons aside from this, but like, all those things considered, I think it's just been so, it's a gut pick, which is probably why they don't give me a vote. Cause like for me, it is all gut. It's a gut pick, and that never, like, that hasn't changed all season.
So I think I'm actually closer to you than maybe other people, because you're right. There is a pressure. To me, there is a pressure to vote Jokic, and I don't even know if it is necessarily what you're saying in terms of, well, SGA is not ready yet. I see it a lot of, well, you really know ball if you vote Jokic. It's almost like
that'd be your choice, yeah.
Right? It is a little bit like, if I just pick the guy scoring a lot of points, I'm going to look like a casual. And I don't think that that's fair to either Jokic or SGA, because Jokic is still putting up insane just box score numbers. You don't need to know the VORPs and the on-off stuff and all that just to see that Jokic is putting up, has a 30-point, 20 rebound, 20 assist, triple-double. Like, you don't have to, like, that all speaks for itself. And the numbers that SGA is putting up scoring-wise are just, they're just downright Michael Jordan-esque. It's absolutely wild. And so I still don't, I'm not ready to completely reveal where I want to go, because I want to do that on a show next week. But I do kind of go back to, when I really think about this, and this is where I was last year, who had the best season? Like, in my gut, how do I feel about that? Like, who had the best season? And then I'll watch a Nuggets game, I'm like, there's nobody on the planet better than this guy. And then you'll watch a Thunder game, and I'm like, I don't know the last time I saw a scoring season quite like this. Nobody could stop this guy. And so that's why I kind of keep going back and forth. But who had the best season? That's kind of where I keep trying to end up going. And then I strip away all the, well, what's more valuable to your team, and trying to take into account your teammates and how much should you take into account and all this stuff. It's just very confusing and needlessly so. But that's where I'm sort of at right now between Jokic and SGA. I found the other awards actually a little bit easier, except for Defensive Player of the Year, which is a whole other thing that we talked about last week. So with that said, we're going to get into our Gut Feelingz Awards. I just changed the name of it. It was originally just the Feelingz Awards. But we could go by gut, or we can get into the feelings analytics of all these things. So these are the Feelingz Awards. We've got Most Entertaining Player, Feel Good Team, Feel Good Player, Most Entertaining Defender, Coach of the Year, which is the actual award, but that always felt like a vibes pick anyway, so we're just going to keep it. The Christian Wood Award, which I'll explain later, and then the Feel Bad Story. So these are all the awards. We're going to start with the biggest award, the MVP of the Feelingz Awards, the most entertaining player of the season. Katie.
Contentious probably for many people, never for me, but it's Russell Westbrook.
Wow. Was not even on my ballot. Okay. Talk to me.
It was funny when I was like just doing a little bit of like preliminary prep for this and seeing that that Russ is actually in consideration for a sixth man maybe of the year award,
right.
Which is funny. Not funny. Go like all for Russ, but most entertaining player. I think just like I think of the beginning of the season, and I think I'd be hard pressed to not give this to Russ, but the fact that he's on a team now, aside from like some very recent slight slippage that has given him, I think the atmosphere, like the sun that he needs. This guy has like all his right conditions to really thrive. And the fact that also there's someone who, and it happens to be the best basketball player in the world, who happens to recognize those qualities in him and value him for it. It is just like the dynamic of the two of them, like playing off one another, has been so entertaining to me this season. It's just been also like such a beautiful full circle for a Russ apologist like I am to witness, to just see this guy get his due in a really different way, in a kind of a different role, and to basically have two people who you'd think are kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of the way that they approach basketball, basically like recognizing and seeing each other, game after game. I think that synchronicity, it's not something that I might have thought of right away, but now I'm kind of like, well, why didn't I? There's something about just like people competitors whose like basketball brains are like way up here, just being able to communicate in a different language. And the two of them obviously do. Jokic being a man of few words, Russ, few words to like most media, many words when he chooses it. And when he has the platform for himself. But yeah, I think I can't take like the feel goodness story element out of it. So to me, that's like why it's been so entertaining. The last little bit has kind of stunk because like I always have this like preliminary radar for like, okay, when's everybody going to turn against Russell Westbrook again?
Right.
And that radar is going off a little bit, but I don't know, man. I want to see them. I want to see them in the postseason together.
Playing Westbrook in the fourth quarter might have gotten Michael Malone fired, right? I mean, it's pretty wild, and it's such a great point too, because just going back to the Jokic voters again. Nothing against the guy, but there does tend to be I know ball, I'm voting for Jokic thing. That same thing has sort of been the opposite of the Westbrook experience. Is the people who say they know ball actually always are the actuallying of Russell Westbrook. Mm-hmm. In terms of the entertainment factor, the guy competes every single night. He's always running at 120 miles an hour. Even just last night, Pickett finishes the game for Denver in Adelman's first game coaching, and that was sort of the big story coming out of Denver. But I thought Westbrook gave him really good minutes in that first half, and he's still playing his butt off and all these things. He's always been endlessly entertaining. So I love the Westbrook pick. He wasn't on my ballot. I didn't even think of him. I have Jokic, his teammate, I think winning this for me.
Okay.
And he wins it with every slick behind the back pass. I watch all of them multiple times. It's probably I came down to whose highlights did I watch the most this year, and it was Jokic.
Yeah, it's Jokic's highlights are so funny because there's a slow motion quality about them.
And then you're like going full speed.
Yeah, but you're like, well, if they're so slow, why did I need to watch that same highlight 6 times to understand what happened? Which sort of speaks to the difficulty and skill of it all.
It's well said. Runner up for this award, I had Amen Thompson.
Oh yeah, I would take either of the Thompson twins for that.
Yes.
Yeah, for different.
Thompson was ineligible for games played, I think.
For these fake awards, even?
For these fake awards,
okay.
Correct. I mean, it's just Amen Thompson played.
What's your quota? Like, what's the threshold we're talking?
You have to play more than your twin brother.
Okay.
I think is the quota.
So that's a twin specific rule.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So Caleb Martin, Cody Martin, they come up later.
Okay.
They don't. Feel good team.
Yeah, this was actually tough for me because there were, I mean, I would have said the season started with the Magic and then it felt very bad very quickly and
Right.
for
They could
very
be
long.
a different award for this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they could. But that even feels bad to do. Spoiler alert. So for me, it's going to be a toss up between the Pistons and the Cavs. I would have picked the Rockets, but they're starting a lot more fights than I would like to see like on any given night for no reason, you know? Anyway, so I think for me, it's going to be the Cavs. Generally because of consistency. I love it when a team is so good that people get bored of them. I mean, I actually hate it, but I love that people that like, I guess like even earlier than midway through the season, most people just stopped talking about the Cavs, right? There was just like this sense
they won
of like
15 games in a row and they're like, yep, we get it.
Yeah. Or it's like, I'll check back in a couple weeks and that record's going to be broken. Like they're going to have lost a game and they didn't, you know? And then I think people just get bored of the consistency and just like consistently being so excellent and put together. So to me, there's something very wholesome and entertaining of that. They also roster Jared Allen, probably the most feel good / wholesome player in the entire league, the computer building, cat loving man himself. And just generally like to be more sincere, I think the Donovan Mitchell fit has been so cool to see. And knowing, I forget when he said this, I think he said this like maybe a month ago, but just that before the season started, you know, when he signed that extension, the conversations he was kind of having with the team about the direction, with the front office rather, with the direction they wanted to go in and the role they wanted to have him take. And I think it's always really interesting to hear about these guys who, you know, when he was with the Jazz, he was just asked to play one way, one role all the time. And there can be a sense of like somebody is one-dimensional, but usually it's just because they've played in a one-dimensional way for one team and we haven't seen, or have they been given the opportunity to change that. But to hear him be like quite candid, almost even a little bit nervous about like how he was going to step up and lead the team in that way, and to watch him kind of take a back seat with a lot of these younger guys who've, to be fair, were like thriving without him before he got there, but then he can mold that team into a much different entity. And then like Kenny Atkinson coming in, right, and just completely changing by these little tweaks here and there, like no big overhauls necessary. But yeah, just generally like they all really seem to care for and support one another. They just keep getting better, which is a very cool thing to watch, especially when I think of like a Celtics team last year, and there was a point when it seemed like they just hit a threshold of greatness, right? Like how could they possibly get any better? And there was something a little bit mechanical about it. The Cavs never feel that way, you know? They're very serious. So I don't mean to take that away from like the contentiousness of it all, but to me, it's just like a very feel good. The entirety of that team is just like a very feel good entity.
So my answer was the Pistons, but I like your answer more. So we're going to talk about that.
Okay. I mean, Pistons were like, this was a tough debate for me internally.
Yeah. I had the Blazers as sort of like a distant third, just because I feel good for those players, even though the organization is trying to tank and they're like, no, we're going to keep winning. And that's kind of fun. But to the Cavs point of it, there's multiple players who could qualify for Feel Good Player of the Year on this team. So you just do the math and you have multiple of those guys on one team. The Cavs make sense as the feel good team. Evan Mobley has gotten better. Darius Garland has gotten better. Ty Jerome, what he could win. He's in the running for most improved this season. I think Jared Allen has gotten better. I think there's so many guys on this roster who've just gotten better. Kenny Atkinson can win Coach of the Year. So you got all that.
Wade.
Dean Wade, baby. Like they're
second coming of D Wade. It's Dean Wade.
Who knew? Almost as good as the first Dwayne Wade. If you just go by his record, I mean, it's infallible. But the Donovan Mitchell part of this is really interesting, and it's a feel good element in of itself, because I remember you go back to before the season, he signs the extension, he films that video, I think while he was driving, which I don't condone, but of why he decided to return to Cleveland and how he really wanted to make it his team, and he felt like there was an ownership level. And you mentioned, the conversations that he would have with the coaching staff and the front office about what he could see in the team. And he basically just even saying stuff like, hey, under Bickerstaff, they were running me with Jared Allen in these 2-man lineups. I want to do it with Evan Mobley. I think I can unlock another level of his game. And then they gave him the keys and let him do it. But he still took a very serious step back in terms of his own production. And we don't always see this from players. Sometimes we do, but we don't always see players who are super productive and have put up the numbers that Mitchell can put up and obviously hit a ceiling to what that can lead to and say, you know what, there's other things that I can do that are going to materially help winning and improve our record and improve our standing in the league, and then go out and do those things. And that, I think, is such a dramatic mindset shift that not a lot of players either A, would or are capable of doing or recognize that they should do, or B, are allowed to do, right? Because there's a lot of teams that just say, that all sounds great, but we still need you to score 30 points a night because we just don't have anybody else that can do it. Cleveland does have multiple guys who could score, so they almost allow him to do that a little bit more. But I think all of that's really cool. And then now he's going to probably come in 4th or 5th in the MVP race, which a top 5 finish in MVP, it's not winning the MVP, but it's still a big deal, I think. I think that's something that we all keep track of and should keep track of. But what I like about that is you hear players all the time say, oh, people don't watch the sport. They just look at the box scores and then go from there. I think Mitchell is the rare case where that's not the case at all. It's, no, we're watching you, dude, and everybody really appreciates, like, we know what you're capable of, and we're giving you points for that, but we really appreciate this next level that you've gotten to in terms of taking a step back and doing it for the team. And I think the value in that, and everybody recognizing the value of that, is really cool. Plus, the Cavs are the #1 seed in the East, and that's always great to be better than the Celtics, too.
Yeah. I think there's also something to be said for the realization that Mitchell must have had in that, to take a step back like that, you are taking yourself out of MVP contention in a sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even though you are on the winningest team in the league, record setting winningest team in the league. And the fact that he's willing, granted, against Shai and Jokic, as we've talked about extensively, what kind of window does he have? It's a tough year, right? Mm-hmm. But to also just say you know what, I'm fine not even approaching that debate. I'm over here with making this team a lot better. I think that's pretty cool.
Feel good player.
Mm-hmm. Oh, feel good player. I was we just talked about it. No, we talked about
that was it.
Wait, I think I just blanked on mine. Oh no.
I'll give you mine.
Okay, please.
Runner-up, Jaden Ivey, also ineligible because
I just remembered. Okay.
Tobias Harris, I thought was a feel-good player because he's been secretly really good for the Pistons, and I just love that he doesn't suck anymore. That's fun. Obviously being a little facetious there. Tyler Hero, my homer pick there, but I love that the guy always wanted to be an all-star. Similar sort of mindset shift, not in terms of taking a step back in production, but hey, 6 years into my career, I'm going to change a lot about what I do, and then got the thing that he always wanted, which was an all-star appearance. So that felt good at a local level. But the winner here to me is Darius Garland. And
okay.
I don't have an awesome reason other than last year really seemed to have sucked for him with the jaw injury and the fact that his numbers were all down and the Cavaliers' season kind of went the other way. And he comes back and now he's awesome again, and everybody remembers that, and it's fun.
Yeah. He also went through some pretty deep, personal losses and things last season too. And I think to see him, he was always someone who was so much fun to watch. I think now it's so funny how maligned joy has become as a word, in the NBA, or kind of a buzzword. We
or weaponized by Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy's at one side. Jokic, I think, was rejecting it last night when someone asked him about it. He's like, no, I'm a professional. This is my job. So I get it all. But the Darius Garland did play with a lot of joy. And I think watching that kind of fizzle out, understandably, last year with everything else going on, was a huge bummer. So to see that back is great. I remembered my pick. I don't know if we decided what the rules were in terms of games missed for this, but you can't disqualify him. I'm going to veto it. But Jared McCabe for me is a feel-good player, almost even increased by the fact of what a bummer what a depressing season for the Sixers. What like a bad time to be just like one of the most joyful people. I just use joy again, but one of the most like exuberant, exciting people in the league, and then to play for the Sixers this season, especially, and then also to get hurt. It sucks, but I really like Jared McCain. I really like him. I don't have TikTok. I'm familiar with his TikTok game, but I do not have TikTok. But I like that he has used social media in a much different way, I think, than we've ever seen. He's so comfortable with himself, which I think like it can take a really long time in this league, especially for rookies and younger players to get to. I think I don't know, there's something really like endearing and genuine about someone who like, I think after he got hurt, he did a YouTuber a TikTok, and it was just basically like, come with me to my surgery appointment. And it was
everything's content, man.
Yeah, I know. But it for some reason, it's not in a way that annoys me.
Right.
And usually that stuff really annoys me because it seems super disingenuous or just like you're doing things for content, which I think is such a depressing way and way to frame our lives now. But for some reason, Jared McCain, it does not seem like that to me. Yeah, he's just a real breath of fresh air. And I'm so curious, like I love to watch him play basketball too. Like he reminds me of Tyrese Maxey a lot in his early days in terms of just being a spark plug, coming out and doing pretty much anything that's asked of him on the floor. Ironically, like that kind of energy is what the Sixers are desperate for. They just...
You listen to a Sixers fan talk, and it kind of... They have to talk themselves into a circle when they talk about this season. It's, the Paul George thing didn't really work, and maybe we shouldn't have signed Embiid to the extension. But, what else were we going to do about it? You had to re-sign Embiid. Paul George, nobody knew. Like, who saw this coming? And then, Tyrese Maxey, he's had an inefficient year, but, it's because he's had the shoulder of the scoring load. And, it's a circle. Every conversation goes, and then it all ends up at some point, they go, and at least we got Jerry McCain coming back next year. And it's sort of like this little, like... Oh, I forgot I had the cookies in the back of the pantry. It's like, oh, that's right. And you just grab me like, I feel good about this,
It's your in case of emergency.
Right, exactly. That's a great pick. Okay. Most entertaining defender is our next category. So this is an award that I came up with the end of last season. I call this the Emmy for best defender.
Okay.
It's the player that I want to give defensive player of the year to, but know that I can't because none of the stuff backs it up. But I just love watching this guy play, and it's somebody who I tune in every single night on League Pass, and I'm like, I can't wait to see what X is going to do to fuck up the other team's day. Like, I just can't wait. And the winner last year was Jalen Suggs.
Okay.
And he would have been the winner this year, but he was ineligible because the games played, just because he literally wasn't out there. And that's the only reason he's not winning this award. I've got 4 candidates here. But before I give you my candidates, did you have somebody that you wanted to talk about for this award?
Yeah, but I took it a little bit more literally. And then I went back and watched a lot of game footage because I wanted to make sure that this worked both ways, like in a real way, but also in the way that I think I knew you meant. Because to me, it is Dyson Daniels, but I know he is eligible for Defensive Player of the Year. But I will say, like, the way that he plays basketball is so not trying to, this is not a slight, this is not like a jab, but it's so upright to me. It's like of another era. It's like watching the Wilt Chamberlain era of basketball. Like his posture is just like physically upright. He seems like he's too stiff to be sneaky, and yet he's leading the league in steals. And the way he steals, we were talking about earlier, watching Jokic clips over and over again. I do the same thing with Dyson Daniels to be like, how did he get that steal? Like, where did he come from? Like, sometimes he will just kind of use his height and his length to like spin himself around a defender, almost like he's getting into their gravitational slipstream to just be able to get the ball. And then he never seems like, he is a bit stiff, so it never seems like he's that loose with it. You know, I think of a lot of people who we think of as like being really good with interceptions and steals are like a more smooth, right? And like able to play in a slick way, and like he really doesn't. Like and he always seems kind of surprised that it's happened. Like he's always like, you know, and it's like, man, they made like a whole, you're the Great Barrier Thief. Like they made a really excellent nickname for you, and you're still a little bit like pleased every time that this happens. So Yeah. That's why he's
This is why I have you on, because you're the first person to point out Dyson Daniels' posture mid game. And
watch. It'll
and
be impossible not to see. Like plays.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. He's very like straight up. Like he's
super upright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to see an X-ray of his spine. So Dyson Daniels won the award for me too. We nailed it.
Okay.
He
All
got
right.
the Emmy. He quite literally stole it from Jalen Suggs. There is not a defender who I enjoy watching more than Dyson Daniels. Other candidates, really quick before we get into more about Daniels: Draymond Green, Amen Thompson, Lou Dort. Like those are my guys. Draymond Green, he would have won for most entertaining defensive picture.
Yeah.
Like not for the whole
yeah.
season, just what he did to Giannis in that one game. I was like, oh my God, this was really cool. I felt like I just jumped back into a time machine to like 8 years ago. But Amen Thompson is just going to finish in the warning from like for all these awards. I just love him. Lou Dort is fun in the way that he just stands in front of players and doesn't move. And I find that
brick wall.
So I just find that so interesting in the sort of the whirring of an NBA offense and all the movement and all the stuff that he just stands there and doesn't let you through. And it's so cool. But more impressive, Dyson Daniels is so freaking entertaining. You're absolutely right about the way he gets steals. He does it in a variety of ways. He's got like the wingspan and all that stuff. He also has like these really great instincts for getting both hands over his head to intercept those passes, which is kind of the hardest pass to intercept, is the one that goes right over your skull, because it's just obviously the hardest place to get to. But he's got really good instincts about getting to that. But what I love about him is when he's defending a guy in a pick and roll, he's got this way of going over the screen, getting onto the hip of the guard, the ball handler, which is exactly where the ball handler wants you to be. They have a term for it. Get the defender on your hip, right? And so he's like, all right, mission accomplished. Got the defender on the hip opposite of the ball that I'm handling with, or the hand that I'm handling with, and it doesn't matter, because then Dyson Daniels is like, no, I actually have you right where I want you. And he just takes one of his 1,000,000 feet arms and just pokes the ball away from you. And then what's my favorite moment of all of this is when the ball handler looks down and doesn't have the ball anymore.
Yes.
He's they're going to shoot the ball and their hands are empty. And they're just like, what happened to the ball? And Dyson Daniels is on the other end, finishing with a layup or a dunk or something. Like, I love it. I love watching him play. It happens like it literally happens 3 times a game. He's averaging 3 steals per game. And every time the offensive player looks surprised. Like, I know what happened to everybody else. It would never happen to me though. And then it happens to them.
I want to talking about this has made me really want to map out like a steel tree or something, because I want to know there's like schools, right, that guys come from. And I think of like someone who I think had this record for the longest time, which was TJ McConnell. And I remember talking to TJ about this and being like, do you just have marks at this point? Because there seem to be people who you're very good for some reason at intercepting. And like, why is that? And TJ's very polite. And he was like, I don't want to imply that anyone is bad at their job or like an easy mark. But he's like,
or
if
give
you're
away trade secrets.
Yeah, he's like, but if you're seeing it, then maybe they're just a little bit easier to anticipate than other people, which was very diplomatic. But, I think that's way more of like a cerebral way. Whereas I think Dyson Daniels is like extremely instinctual about the way that he does it. Just given, again, the surprise and his reaction when he keeps doing it.
He also has a top 5 like cartoon villain face in the league.
Yeah.
Which adds to the whole thing. He almost seems like like literally a villain here just to ruin your offensive day, right? Like it's great. So congrats to the Emmy to Dyson Daniels for most entertaining defensive player. We're gonna go to coach of the year. So you could just give me your coach of the year pick. I mean, this is a legit. This is the most feelingsy of the real NBA awards, because it's so hard. If it was just by best record, it would be really easy to do this award every year. Just give it to the coaching the team with the best record. But this feels like a vibes pick every season.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It always is. Granted, like, no, I was going to be like, well, is it because of like the best team? But then it's like usually who we consider the best teams to be, it's not, that is also a vibes pick, like, which is, I mean, it's JB Bickerstaff to me, and like in large part because of the Pistons and the the things that we've already said about them and the season that they're having. Just like to take a team like that. I also like, I think this, but like I'm a secret, not so secret, but like I'm a Pistons fan through and through. Like that before the Raptors were even a team in Toronto, I was a Pistons fan. So for me to see this team become the thing I like for 3 years, I've been like, they're better than this. Like they're better than a bottom of the East team. Right. And, you just needed a lot of things, but you also needed someone to come in and encourage and coach and pull the right levers and see these little glimmers of potential, right, in your athletes. And I think that's exactly what he's done. I think he's also just been like, recognize the team he has in front of him versus trying to coach them up to something. But by coaching them where they're at, they've all kind of, taken several leaps this season. And confidence and ability and just like being able to put everything all together. And like we started this by talking about revenge games. I feel like there's something to a revenge season, like after you get fired to go on and do something like this, right, to a team like the Pistons is, I think, the best sort of feel good revenge you could have.
So I don't know that he'll be my actual coach of the year pick, but he's my pick here.
Okay.
If we are leaning a little bit more towards the vibes, for all the things that you said, I love this Pistons team. I love the way that they come together. They seemed last year like a group of adopted kids that just like in an Annie movie, or just like not adopted kids, or like in an orphanage.
Orphans,
they looked like they're orphans. They looked like a group of orphans that just taking care of somebody that didn't want to take care of them. And this year now they feel like grown like college kids, all hanging out in the same dorm, where they're all there for a common cause. JB Bickerstaff is leading them. He wants them to do well. He wants to teach them. He wants to guide them. And it's just been such a great season for them. They were my pick for feel good team before you talked me into Cleveland. And you got to put a lot of credit for Bickerstaff there. And I think doing the thing that he did, which was, there was nothing here in terms of structure or organization or care or thought very much. It's very clear at this point that Monty Williams just wasn't all that interested in doing the job. For somebody like Bickerstaff to say, look, I coached the Cavaliers team to a team that could win 50 games a year. I know that I can put a foundation together. I know I can get guys to buy in. I can just now apply that to this Detroit Pistons team that needs it in the most desperate way possible. And to just do that seemingly overnight, and not only have the team winning a bunch of games, but now Cade Cunningham is having a career year where he's going to be all NBA this year. You see Jaden Ivey, before he got hurt, who was just cast away under Monty Williams, had a real role on this team before the injury. Tobias Harris kind of coming over as a veteran, kind of finding his voice in the league again. It's actually fun to watch Tobias Harris now because he does stuff and he's not just asked to stand in the corner like he was in Philadelphia all the time. You just got a lot of people that are a lot of fun to watch, and Bickerstaff, I think, deserves a lot of credit. And I love the way that you put it. He didn't try to make them something that they weren't. He's like, this is what you are. Let me empower you to do the things that you do really well. And then we'll get to the development and all that kind of stuff later. But let's just figure out what it is that we are first. And it turns out they're pretty good. Turns out they're good enough to be in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Yeah. And I think that's always what it's kind of been with the Pistons, right? Is any coach that comes in is like, you know what, I'm going to change you. I'm going to change this team into something that I think is better. Right. But inevitably, like, they can't do that. They're not equipped to do that. They are the team that they are. And that's like certainly not a slight, because you see what they did this season with being the team that they are. But again, it's like trying to slap on blueprints that don't work. Right. And this happens obviously a ton around the league. But I think with a team in as fragile a state as the Pistons were, I think if this was like another terrible season for the team, like that, I think they would have probably blown it up. And then it's like, what happens to all these guys, right? What happens to like a Cade Cunningham, who's had like the best, who's been so like tempered just through like season after terrible season, and is now, and it has been so much fun to watch, and also like having the best season of his career. Like it's a dark road that I don't want to go down, and I know that's not what we're doing. So I'll stop myself.
The Christian Wood Award. So this is the award for I was not familiar with your game. We all remember the famous Shaq quote. He was talking about Christian Wood. I don't know how many people actually remember that that's who he was talking about. So Shaq, talking about Christian Wood, says, I wasn't familiar with your game. We're going to do the same thing here, Katie. The Christian Wood Award for I wasn't familiar with your game. I don't really know what this award is, other than giving some shine to somebody who've appreciated more this season than maybe you had in previous seasons. It's not to imply that you didn't watch this player or that we didn't know anything about this player, or this player is a rookie and we didn't know anything about this player in college or whatever. It's just, hey, I appreciated watching this player more than in any other season previous.
Okay, mine is kind of hampered because I didn't really watch them. I didn't watch them in any other season because it's Jamal Shet. It's also like it's like a real homer pick, but it's like my ulterior motive is that a lot of other people will maybe decide to want to watch Jamal Shed. Like such a silver lining for the Raptors this season. Also just like such a thrilling, like I love that kind of player, like an under the radar. I think of like a Desmond Bain. I think of a Fred VanVleet before him. I just like usually a Kyle Lowry, like way back, but just generally smaller, very tenacious, no kind of quit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just basically toggles on and off, not a lot of gears, which is fine. And just so determined, and also just like very positive force for good or chaos, depending on the night. But it's like a perfect window for somebody like that on a team that is basically just like, we talked about the Blazers kind of trying to lose and winning against all odds. Like the Raptors have had quite a few of those games, especially down this late stretch where the front office is obviously like, no, we're really trying to tank. And the team's like, no, we want to win. Like we're a bunch of really young guys and like we love to play basketball. We're going to try to do that. So it's Jamal Shed. Yeah,
I love this pick. I was a big fan of his highlight tape. I don't pretend to watch college basketball, but when I love to do the scouting process because it's easier than just watching a whole season of college basketball. And his tape jumped out. I love guys like Jamal Shed. He's straight out of the Lou Dort handbook. It's just small, muscular, wide, plays his ass off. Love it. And there was a period before the Raptors traded Davion Mitchell where every once in a while you would tune into a Raptors game and they would have Mitchell and Shed on the court at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I just remember like leaning forward in my chair and just being like, this is going to be nuts. Like, so I love this pick. This is a great pick. I've got 3.5 candidates here before I get to my finalist, my winner. I've got Toumani Camara, who I just enjoy watching him. And really came onto the season this year. He could win Most Improved. Dyson Daniels, again, qualifying here. Josh Giddey, cool kind of year for him in Chicago. Quentin Grimes making a late push here, even though I was sort of always a Grimes truther, so I don't know if he exactly qualifies. But the winner here for me is Ivica Zubac. I adore watching that guy not move and dominate basketball games. He is... I think I'm picking up on a theme here where I just like players who don't move between him and Lou Dort, but... he's a brick wall. You can't move past him. Watching him go up against Jokic on some nights, it's like the one guy now who actually gives Jokic one-on-one problems, and problems is obviously relative. But he's doing that, but he's also scoring a bunch of points. He's getting a bunch of rebounds. He had a triple-double, was it last night, 2 nights ago? I'm already forgetting. He's been a top 5 center in the league this year. And I think take Kawhi off the table just because of the availability part of it, maybe the Clippers' best player. I think he's been the Clippers' best player all season. He's an absolute anchor of that defense. Mm-hmm. I think Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. and those guys do a really good job on the perimeter, but Zubac being in the middle makes all of it possible. He by him protecting the rim, it allows them to get really aggressive. And he reminds me a little bit of like Defensive Player of the Year era Grizzlies Marc Gasol, where he was just such a high-level positional defender where he just knew if I just take one step to my left here, it'll just kind of screw up everything that they want to do on this side of the court, and they're going to have to drain another 6 seconds off the shot clock, and that just helps our defense overall. He's been a lot of fun, and now he gets to score all the points and do all the things, which is fun for him to be rewarded with.
Mm-hmm. I have one more.
Please.
Then. Though this is like a pick for everyone else. This is like a democratic. I was familiar with this game for quite a long time, but I'm glad so many people seem to like sit up and take notice. But another Clipper, Norman Powell.
Yeah.
just like what a season, and like what a well-deserved season that he's had. Norman Powell, I think like Raptors fans certainly know for like all the failed playoff runs that he was a part of. It's just like he was the guy who would pull something out. Like in that moment when you're like, man, we really need a guy to pull something out. Like it was always Norman Powell.
Yeah.
And he's so consistently good at that. And to see him also get a chance to do that with real like consistency, some of it is because, Kawhi's been out and that the roster hasn't been as solid as probably the Clippers wanted it to be all season, but to just see Norm be able to step into that role with a lot of confidence. And I think just like take his game to another level, because again, if we are talking about the limitations we put on players, there's a sense that with like a player of like Norman Powell's caliber, like someone who's more of a role player, but also you're thinking maybe they're like a fading role player, because that is like such a tough position to keep. But the fact that you can see him add another gear and like basically still stay quite relevant and like a necessity like for the team has been very cool to see. So I was familiar, but like if you weren't, no shade.
Well, he was getting a little all-star buzz, I think.
Yes.
He might win most improved. He might be one of these guys who are actually not eligible for the real awards because of games played. But yeah, that's also a great call. Last award here. Probably shouldn't have ended with this one. Feels like running out of time now that I'm thinking about it. We probably should have ended with the Christian Wood Award. Feel bad story.
Yeah. We're just taking it.
Taking all the wind out of our sails here.
Yeah.
I also found that I had way more candidates for this one than I think I did any other award here. Maybe that's just because we have one negative award and a bunch of other ones that I had to split up between. But your feel bad story of the year.
I mean, it's been a pretty feel bad year, despite all the really wonderful things that we've said. And I don't think this detracts from the fact that like the basketball night after night has been incredible to watch. But the stories, there have been some real rough ones, and like personally rough ones. Firings, I think, are tough to, like, they don't really qualify for me because it's like we're all at the whims of billionaires to some degree. So,
Right.
like, I don't know.
Who among us?
Yeah, who among us? Actually, you know what? I'm going to change. I said at the very beginning that I wasn't going to pick the Magic because it was too sad, but I think that probably fits this. Right. If we're talking about like completely feel bad, like that fits the best, unfortunately. It's a really sad shoe to cram on, but that was a team where like, someone else went down. Then now we've lost someone else. But like, against all odds, they were still able to really keep it competitive and like stay at the top of the East for such a long time until it just became physically impossible. It was like, actually, we have like a roster of 7. We can't like play consistently well anymore. And because I like everything about that franchise as a story and where they should have been this season. So yeah, when I think of them, I get really viscerally depressed. So
it was a real disappointment. They were one of the teams I was most excited to watch. I was so excited for this whole thing about, hey, you guys need a point guard, and they were like, we don't care. And we're gonna throw Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner into the bar rescue, John Taffer, fire kitchen stress test, and we're gonna see if they can come out alive. And I was like, this is fascinating for a million different reasons. And I love watching Paolo and Franz, and there's just a bunch of guys on that team that I really enjoy watching.
And when brothers get to play together,
the Wagner brothers, Jalen Suggs, who at that point had the Emmy for most entertaining defender in the league. There's just a lot of stuff going in there. But then, it gets derailed basically within a week. Paolo goes down, then Franz goes down. I didn't include them just because they're healthier now. And it feels like, well, you can make it out of the play-in tournament. Maybe you make some noise. It feels like their story is still not finished for this season, but it's probably going to end in the place. Okay. But it is disappointing nonetheless. The Pelicans are here for another reasons, but I don't know how bad it feels that Zion got hurt. Other players got hurt, and that really sucked. But at the end of the day, like, Zion's the straw that stirs that drink, and it wasn't that hard to see that coming. The Suns, I think, are a candidate, but I can't really feel bad for them.
No, it's sort of like a comedic, right? Like I'm so sorry to the Suns fans, but there is something about it that it's like, it very much reminds me of the Sixers in the sense of like, why wouldn't this work?
Right. I also had the Sixers not on my list
Hubris.
for the same reason. Yes,
Baby,
exactly.
yeah.
Talk about billionaires. It turns out you can't just spend a bunch of money and shortcut the line. You actually have to build something. I have the Kings here. They
That's a
fire
good
their.
pick.
I don't know
Yeah.
if anybody remembers that they fired their coach because so
I
many other
remember.
coaches got fired since
Yeah.
then. They fire their coach in the like weirdest way. But after a team meeting on the way to a plane, they say, "Hey, Mike Brown, you're not the coach of this team anymore." Also, love Mike Brown, just a media darling, a guy who continues to get jobs and coach well, and then get fired. They traded their star player away, De'Aaron Fox, who at one point seemed to really want to be there, and then just kept abusing him to the point where he's like, you know what, I am going to leave. And they might have to blow it up. You've got Domantas Sabonis now saying, you know, I have to reevaluate things this summer. And they're just left with the discarded parts of the Chicago Bulls who are better without DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine now. It's like, it's a really tough way. And the Sacramento Kings, to me, are an organization I just have a lot of empathy for because I think they have the most loyal fan base in the league. I think Kings fans are awesome. They show up for that team no matter what. They shouldn't, because all they do is screw things up and mess things up. It would be like if Nico Harrison was the GM for 20 years. It's just like every single time you turn around, you're like, you did what now? And they keep showing up, man, and ringing those cowbells. And I love them. And I thought they were really building something. And it was just like 2 years ago that they were the toast of the Western Conference, and everybody was talking about like De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis were doing Sports Center hits showing how they do their two-man game, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. And now it's all gone, and you're just left with watching Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan chuck shots, and that kind of sucks for the fans.
You know, the one thing I will say is you just made me think about this. Now feels prophetic, but do you remember when Domantas Sabonis was traded and there's that cut where they were recording outside and there were all these like fans holding up signs and one said, "Welcome to hell, Domas." Now I'm like, well, we should get that person. What did they know?
What did they know? They knew. That's what it takes. The Mavericks fans are the real answer for this, but they did not qualify because it was just so damn sad. And we already spent the first part of this podcast talking about it, and we are about to talk about it more with Nick Angstadt from Locked On Mavericks. But Katie Heindl, you do the best job writing your Substack Basketball Feelings. Highly recommend. You can't. Everybody already subscribes to it already, but I hope they do. But if they don't, like, there's nothing else like it on the internet. If you like Katie on this show, which I don't know why you wouldn't have, you get a lot of that and much more in the Substack. Really fun having you on for the first time on Real GM Radio.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. I was just thinking of like written for Real GM, now Real GM Radio.
It's
Double threat.
All coming together. Katie Heindl, Basketball Feelings Substack. Thanks so much. All right, Nick Angstadt is here. He's from Locked On Mavericks. You were in the building for Luka Doncic's big return in Dallas. You've been knee deep in this stuff. You had a watch party for Locked On Mavericks the night before the return. Just take me into the Dallas Maverick fan for a second. Like, what was the vibe coming into this game? What was the vibe at the arena?
Anger, catharsis. I don't know. One of the two. They just feel like Mavericks fans got out a lot of emotions in that night. And I keep coming back to this concept that all of this was avoidable, that Nico didn't have to do this. This was a choice by the Mavericks. And it was like this weird, like self-inflicted pain, like the Mavericks on themselves to do this. And you saw it in the way that Mavericks fans responded. I mean, you heard on the broadcast that Fire Nico chants were loud and consistent and like almost felt like they were coordinated at times because of how well they were all saying it together. Just LeBron gets those free throws with 4 seconds into the game, and all of a sudden he gets to the line, the music and everything like stops. There's no PA announcer, there's nothing over the speakers, and it's like Fire Nico just right away as soon as it happened. Every time Luka touched the ball, there was a murmur or there was a cheer or something. The Mavericks fans got to show Luka a lot of love. The moment with the video tribute was, there's not many moments in sports that I say it was like powerful, you know, like, but it felt like it was like some kind of religious experience and religious like event in some way, because you got to see Luka have some kind of closure. He had his emotions obviously out on his sleeve. Mavericks fans felt that with him. And that kind of collective experience, we don't really get in 2025 anymore. And you definitely got it if you were at the game last night.
Did you see tears that weren't Luka's tears? Did you see tears at all from fans?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, video?
Yeah, there were people that were messaging Isaac and myself that said, after that moment, I went to the bathroom at the AAC and cried and like had a hard time coming back to their seat. I mean, there was legit just like emotions from so many Mavericks fans because it's so personal, right? This whole thing about this trade is that the ownership and the front office, they took away the human side of all this, that you have a connection to this star. And so people keep asking the question, well, what if they win a title? What if they win a title? You know, if the Mavericks win a title, if Nico Harrison brings a title to the fan base, like they'll forgive him. I'm like, I don't know. I think it cuts deeper than that. And I don't think just giving them a title, that's not the number one thing that Mavericks fans want, because they have such a relationship with Dirk, obviously, where he had the most satisfying title run ever, where you got exactly what you wanted as a fan, where you saw the Downs 2006. I don't know if you remember what happened in 2006, Wes, as
I'm aware.
Maybe the host of Locked On Heat, but a title was ripped away from the Mavericks in a way that was proven later by books and no. And then you saw him go down in 2007 when they lost in the first round, and you saw how they didn't think they were going to get a title. Then they got the super satisfying title in 2011, and you got to take that whole run with him. And with Luka, we were starting to go through that. You had the 2020 and 2021 series against the Clippers, where you saw him rise. You had 2023 where the Mavericks, or 2022 where the Mavericks went to the Western Conference Finals. Then you lose Brunson. 2023 missed the postseason entirely, even the play-in. Then you get Kyrie in there, bring him in 2024, and make the finals. And it just was, and this was a team that we had hyped up all summer as the deepest team around Luka that he's had. And we just never got a chance to see that team go. And now Mavericks fans will never get a chance to see Luka get that satisfying title and kind of like finish off the hero's arc.
They were contenders before he gets hurt on Christmas Day. What was it? 13 out of 14 games they had won going into that game or something. And some crazy streak. They were playing great. And then, like you said, there's something to be said about, winning championships and all that is great and everything. There's another level to sports fandom, and it's when you're doing it with your guy. And that's what makes the Warriors and Steph Curry so special. Yeah. And I was trying to explain it to my wife last night. She's like, why is this such a big deal? And I was like, imagine if in 2005, the Heat just traded Dwayne Wade to the Celtics. Coming off of like right after that Eastern Conference Finals run before he won with Shaq. And it was like, we have everything we need and we're just going to trade this guy. Or if LeBron James in 2010, instead of leaving as a free agent, got traded by the Cavaliers, it would have been the same thing. And it would have just been like, nobody would ever have seen that coming. And it would have been absolutely crazy. So I understand the emotions of it. I get it. I feel so bad for Mavericks fans. Like, it's just such a rough thing to go through. I thought what you did during your watch party was such a good idea. You invited fans up that attended your watch party to kind of express their emotions and stuff. For people that didn't see some of the clips or even hear that, like, what was maybe the most common refrain or something that might have surprised you in terms of what you heard from some of the fans?
Yeah, we asked the question, how has your fandom changed since the Luka trade? And we got a varying group of responses. There's some that are like, I'm done. I can't. I also have a hard time moving on to the Lakers and being a Lakers fan, but I think I'll kind of watch them out of one eye and, always root for Luka and his career and all that. The response that I got that I found the most interesting was the fans that are like, yeah, it infuriated me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, and then you go, all right, so how's your fandom now? And they're like, well, it hasn't really changed. I still watch every game. I still listen to every show. I still am invested. And it's just like those fans, you have this connection to a team, and this thing that you love hurt you in some way or felt like it betrayed you in some way. And they're just like, maybe it's Stockholm syndrome. Maybe
do you ever envy people who are just not sports fans? I find I envy it all the time. It's just like,
sometimes, but then you get a finals, then you get a drafting Luka Doncic, the moment where you feel like you win, and there's just nothing like that. Trying to explain to so many people that reached out in 2024 when the Mavericks were going to the finals, and I was traveling around everywhere, and like everybody in my life was seeing pictures all over the place, like, oh my gosh, this is so great, and they're trying to like jump on the bandwagon as it's happening. And there's something about being locked in so much with a team and getting to know players like, PJ Washington and the standing on business moment, and Derek Lively, and seeing him get drafted and then have him play and then have him be a player that can play in the NBA finals, and see Luka obviously go through all the ups and downs I just said, and to get to that moment where they make the finals. There's just nothing like that in sports or in life where you can just feel connected to a group of people or performers in some way, and then you share that with them. Like a lot of sports, teams will say, oh, we share this title with the fans. And it kind of is like you take that whole run with them, like an Emmy or an Oscar. You don't have that same experience. You go and you work on a set, and then you just, then the audience experiences it after it's already done. But with sports, it's happening in the moment, live. You follow everything. You have opinions, you have thoughts, you have feelings about it. You get to share those like nightly because of the live aspect of it. And we saw that in full force last night. You got to feel exactly what fans felt.
Was there like almost a, I don't know, satisfaction that Luka and the Lakers won? Were Mavericks fans almost rooting for that result, considering the bigger picture here?
Yes, absolutely. There are a lot of Mavericks fans that are just done with this team, so they don't really care. This team this year, like they don't care what happens to this season. They wanted them to tank. I think that probably was the smart thing, but they decided to go for it, and so this is where they are. But I had so many fans come up to me and potentially even people that work for the team say, I just hope he goes off tonight. I hope he goes off tonight, and I hope he just gets like his revenge in some way or gets to make his statement in some way. And so, yeah, there's a lot of satisfied Mavericks fans. And there's fans in there that tried to sell their season tickets back, and the Mavericks only accepted a couple of those back, and they didn't get to. And so now they're like, yeah, now they want everything that can happen to a team, maybe not the players themselves, but we want everything bad that can happen to a team happen to this team because it hurt me in this way.
If so, no Nico Harrison people were ejected, right? Nobody got thrown out of the game wearing a Fire Nico shirt or anything like that, because that had happened in previous games.
I didn't hear of anybody getting ejected last night. I don't know that it didn't happen, but I did not hear of anybody. There's a lot that leading up to it. There's a lot of people that got removed for different things. There's signs that were too big and things like that. The people at our live show were talking about they had signs removed that were too big or something like that. And every arena has certain sign size laws and things like that. And that I've heard that happen before, but. I didn't hear anything last night, and there have certainly been people with, Nico shirts and Nico hats and all that throughout this whole time, and it's kind of quelled since the opening, like since the first couple of games after the trade.
But obviously, it was front and center in that game where Luka was there. I'm trying to figure out what is next for Nico Harrison, because this is the number one thing. In the it's the first sentence of the first paragraph of whatever article is written about him forever. And I'm watching on TV, and he's just sort of standing in the tunnel, like behind a lot of people. He never comes out. Meanwhile, Rob Pelinka, 50-yard line, front row, just like basking in the glory of everything that had happened here. And Nico Harrison is just trying his best to like be there as little as possible, it seemed like to me. Was that kind of your sense of things?
Since the trade, there's a tunnel right behind the scorer's table.
Right.
And he's just been sitting there and standing there basically every single game. So he can either duck out real quick or not. Before the trade, he was sitting in suites. The Mavericks have these certain seats that, the front office sits in that are kind of close to courtside. He was there a lot, just roaming around out there. But yeah, Rob Pelinka was there last night on the scores table, closer to the Mavericks bench, with Luka's business manager, that was Dirk's business manager as well, and Bill Duffy, who's Luka's agent, that is a fascinating conversation we will have all summer with Locked On Mavs. Did the Mavericks, screw over Bill Duffy because they're, in that organization and that agency, because there's a lot of implications with that. But yeah, just seeing that, and I wish somebody got a picture, because there's probably an angle where you could get Rob Pelinka sitting down, smiling and like folding his arms, and Nico Harrison just like chilling back there in that tunnel, because you could get it in line. And that just said everything about how this trade has gone on. But the chapter for Nico Harrison moves on to this. He has to win now. He has to win. They have to win a title. At the very least, or else this is going to be the number one and only thing that people will talk about in his career. At least there'll be some kind of footnote if they win a title where it's like, all right, he did this, but they won a title. He also, to try and redeem himself at all for Mavericks fans, he also has to be right about his bet against Luka. Luka has to break down. Luka has to become Joel Embiid, where the injuries are just too much, where he plays 30 games a year. Or Luka has to become Andrew Luck, where the injuries just become so much that he decides, you know what, I'm going to walk away early from this. And Luka has said in the past, he said, I won't play this forever. People have brought up LeBron's 40,000 points, and he's like, oh, I won't get there. I won't play basketball long enough. And so maybe that's just the intimidation of seeing how many years it takes to get to where LeBron is. But if that's true, then maybe Nico Harrison is proved right in some way. But it would have to be something terrible like that happening to Luka, or the Mavericks would have to win a title, or probably both, for Mavericks fans to like at some point say, you know what, Nico was probably right about this.
Yeah, it's almost like one title with Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving versus 10 years of maybe never winning a championship with Luka, hypothetically, but it being what it's been for the last 4 or 5 years. You know, that we're talking about sports and fandom and everything like that. Like that's an interesting trade-off, right? It's like your guy for 10 years and just go through it, or just like one kind of championship with a guy you haven't grown to love in Anthony Davis, and a guy that was here for a little bit in Kyrie Irving, whatever it is. I've heard that I understand the fire Nico chants, obviously. I do wonder if the owner is like, what did you talk me into here? Like, what just happened? You're seeing some of the figures that are being estimated that they're going to lose 7 figures in revenue because of this trade and all this stuff. But if you're Nico Harrison, you can't quit. Like, I've heard people say, like, you just got to quit if you're Nico Harrison and just move out of the state. I'm like, no, you have to. You can't do that. You have to try to build something here. That is the only possible way to kind of. Because if you just quit, you're done in sports. Like, there is no coming back for Nico Harrison in any capacity to anything, I feel like.
I bet he get work for the Lakers at some point.
Maybe.
He has to see it through. Ownership, as far as I've heard, were not in attendance at the game last night, which is maybe telling in some way. And I think for them, they just look at this as, all right, well, it's got to work on the investment. So Luka cannot be worth the $350 million investment that they were going to put in. I think they were okay with taking a short-term loss if it meant not making a terrible investment in a $350 million deal in that sense. And so I think that's the next step for them. But for Nico, he's got to see it through now. I mean, he's on, and I think ownership has said in Nico he trusts, and went to the finals, and now they're like, oh, he can do whatever he wants. He was in a very unique situation that there was like no guardrails besides himself and ownership to do this, and now here we are. And the Mavericks have a good team. Like they'll come back next year and they'll be good and all that, but it just won't be the same. I've been comparing it to Christmas, and the first time that you learned that Santa is not real. Sorry for if you're listening with your kids, but the first time you realize Santa's not real, like Christmas is still special and can still be a good time, but it's never going to be that same way like that it was when you were like, you had the wonder and the belief that there was something magical, there.
Yeah. I say it all the time. We could talk about traits and all this stuff and drafting and scouting and all this stuff, but there's few players that just have that magical thing, that magic. And
like a Luka magic?
Such as, for instance. Nick Angstadt, you do great work over at Locked On Mavericks, everything you got going on over there. Thanks for jumping on Real Jam Radio.
Anytime.